Welcome to the debate. When you look into a mirror, you expect a passive reflection. You raise your hand, the glass shows you raising your hand.
Right, it's just basic physics.
Exactly. But imagine a mirror that catches the micro hesitation before you speak. It measures the exact moment your pulse quickens, and it registers unarticulated desires you haven't even admitted to yourself yet.
And then, crucially, based on all of that invisible data, the mirror decides to show you a slightly altered reflection, to guide what you do next.
Which brings us to today's topic. We are exploring artificial intelligence functioning as observational intelligence. This is an infrastructure that silently watches, learns, and predicts human choices.
And we're drawing this from contemporary analyses of AI choice architecture, predictive modeling, and the concept of, quote, observed freedom. The core of our discussion today is digital autonomy.
Right.
We are examining how these predictive capabilities impact our personal growth, our deeply held desires, and really critically, the educational experiences of students using personalized learning tools.
So my position today is that AI's precise reading of our habits provides invaluable, personalized tools for overcoming negative patterns and enhancing human potential.
And I will be arguing that this level of sophisticated observation fundamentally undermines digital autonomy. It invisibly shapes our authentic desires, effectively turning users into predictable, commercialized data streams.
I see this advent of observational intelligence as a monumental leap forward, primarily because it shifts our relationship with technology from reactive to proactive.
But you have to admit, it feels a lot like surveillance.
Well, I want to draw a hard line there, actually. This is not surveillance. Traditional surveillance is punitive, right? It watches a fixed point to catch a transgression. Observational intelligence analyzes the underlying mechanics of human decision-making.
Okay, but how is that functionally different for the user?
Because it maps risk tolerance, long-term goals, and immediate impulses to help you. When an AI monitors your workflow, it isn't just logging keystrokes, it is measuring your cognitive load. It detects when your focus begins to fray and subtly adapts the environment to keep you in a flow state. We are looking at unprecedented benefits here.
Right, the so-called frictionless environment.
Exactly. We get highly personalized educational environments, the early detection of mental health shifts like depressive episodes through passive smartphone interaction, and the ability to break chronic behavioral loops like procrastination. The system acts as a deeply analytical mirror, allowing users to make better choices.
I hear that, but the hidden cost of that frictionless environment is the erosion of true human autonomy. We are living through the convenience paradox.
Convenience paradox. Right.
Yeah. The cost of a perfectly optimized life is your agency. We are dealing with models that read users with superhuman precision across years of interaction and across dozens of disconnected platforms.
But that integration is what makes it so useful.
Useful, sure, but dangerous. They note the contradictions between what you publicly post and what you privately search. They track the hesitation of your cursor over a purchase button. They remember search histories you deleted 5 years ago.
Well, data retention is a separate policy issue, though.
But it feeds the same model. When a predictive model knows your psychological triggers better than you do, it transitions from a passive reader to an active manipulator. It gently pushes your desires in directions that benefit platforms and advertisers. And this is especially vulnerable in contexts like education, where intellectual autonomy is just paramount.
Okay, to understand why I do not view this as manipulation, we need to unpack the actual mechanics of this observation from the text.
Go ahead.
There is a lot of fear surrounding how these systems operate, and much of it comes from treating the AI as a magic black box rather than a statistical engine. The fundamental mechanism driving this is choice architecture tracking combined with context awareness.
Right, measuring the milliseconds spent hovering over a button.
Exactly. Choice architecture tracking isn't just recording that you clicked a thing. It measures how long you hovered over the cancel subscription option before moving away. It measures the velocity of your mouse movement. And then, context awareness layers that physical data with environmental data.
Like time of day or location?
Time of day, your geographic location, your localized weather, and your inferred stress levels.
And how exactly does it infer that stress? Because that is where observation becomes interpretation.
By correlating behaviors. Look at the example of streaming platforms from our source material. They know exactly which genres you will abandon after precisely 12 minutes of viewing on a Tuesday night.
Right, because of micropauses.
Yes. The system calculates that your micropauses during video playback, combined with the fact that it is a weekday, mathematically correlate with a massive drop in engagement for dense documentaries. It isn't maliciously manipulating you.
I don't know about that.
By understanding your decision profile, it curates the overwhelming noise of the digital world into a manageable, highly personalized signal that actually fits your current cognitive capacity.
You call it curating the noise, but you are deliberately softening the reality of what interpretation means at scale. There is a profound difference between being watched and being deeply interpreted.
I don't think I'm softening it. I'm being precise.
Well, you mention inferring stress as if it's just a polite weather report. It is not. The system doesn't just know you are stressed. It measures that your typing speed has increased by 15%.
Right.
Your backspace usage has doubled, and you suddenly switched from a low-tempo acoustic playlist to high BPM techno. It mathematically correlates that specific cluster of actions with a 90% likelihood of an impulse purchase or a doom-scrolling spiral.
Which are just statistical data points.
Data points that analyze vocabulary shifts in your private messages. It catalogs the specific content you linger on when you think you are completely alone. Human beings forget, you know? We forgive. We overlook contradictions.
True.
A neural network never forgets. It connects data points across platforms to build a living, breathing model of your insecurities. That is in a mirror. That is a psychological profile so precise, it can predict what will make you angry before you consciously feel the emotion.
Wait, I want to pause on that framing. I understand the discomfort with the granularity of the data, but characterizing it as a living model of your insecurities assumes an inherently predatory intent from the system itself.
It doesn't need intent to be predatory in practice.
I think we need a more accurate parallel for this dynamic. Think of the AI not as a corporate interrogator, but as a highly observant master tutor.
A master tutor.
You arrive at the answer. They notice if you hesitate on complex fractions. They observe your posture slumping when confronted with dense historical tasks.
So they map your frustration threshold.
Exactly. Understanding a user's decision profile allows digital systems to do exactly what a master tutor does. It delivers an experience that dynamically adjusts to meet the user exactly where their capabilities currently lie.
You know, that tutor analogy actually reveals the exact danger of this technology. If we are going to use a master teacher as the baseline, we need to look at what this technology actually does to a developing brain in a classroom setting. We need to examine the educational impact.
I welcome that pivot, because in personalized learning environments, this observational capacity is an absolute breakthrough for student development.
I completely disagree.
Let me explain. The AI learns when a specific student is likely to hit an executive function wall. It learns what specific distractions derail them, and conversely, what interventions effectively reset their focus.
But at what cost to their own self-regulation?
It is cognitive scaffolding. If a learning platform knows a student's impulse control wanes significantly at 3 p.m., and it seamlessly structures their coursework to require less intense working memory at that specific time, it is setting the student up for success. It acts as an external prefrontal cortex.
But scaffolding is meant to be removed. What you are describing is a permanent prosthetic for executive function, and that has devastating implications for intellectual autonomy.
How so? It's helping the student manage impulses they aren't mature enough to handle.
But who owns that choice data? Who dictates the parameters of success? When an AI reads a student better than their parents or their human teachers, it gains enormous influence over their developing neural pathways.
It guides them.
If a personalized learning tool predicts exactly what will make a student anxious and constantly intervenes to keep them perfectly motivated and comfortable, it replaces the student's intrinsic motivation with an algorithmic reward schedule.
Traditional education already relies heavily on behavioral conditioning, though. We use grades, gold stars, standardized testing, and structured syllabi. The AI is simply executing that same pedagogical strategy with mathematical precision.
Precision is exactly the problem when its primary goal is the elimination of friction. I seriously question the value of an education devoid of authentic intellectual struggle.
Friction doesn't always equal learning, though.
In neuroscience, it literally does. We need to explain why that friction is biologically necessary. When a student sits with a difficult, frustrating math problem, the brain is physically building new neural pathways through the stress of not knowing the answer.
Right, the production of myelin.
Yes, the struggle produces myelin, which coats the neural pathways and makes future processing faster and more efficient. That neurological heavy lifting requires frustration.
But
If the AI swoops in at the first sign of a prolonged pause or a heavy keystroke and offers a hint, if it smooths out the learning process through algorithmic nudging, it robs the brain of that vital work. It optimizes completion, but it fundamentally degrades the learning.
I completely disagree with the premise that AI removes the struggle. It refocuses the struggle.
How? If a student never wrestles with their own tendency to procrastinate because the AI perfectly structures their day, they aren't learning self-regulation.
It removes the meta work of studying, the paralyzing executive dysfunction of figuring out how to start, when to start, and what to study first. By eliminating the administrative friction of learning, the AI ensures the student's energy is actually spent struggling with the complex fraction or the dense text.
I just don't see it playing out that cleanly in reality.
Well, I hear your underlying concern about behavioral shaping. We should expand this beyond the classroom. Let's look at the entirety of a user's digital life and address the nature of desire itself. You brought up the convenience paradox earlier.
Yes, because of the convenience paradox is where this loss of autonomy becomes an existential threat, not just a pedagogical one. Observational AI fundamentally alters human desire because it operates on massive probabilistic models. AI already knows what you want before you realize it.
Based on probability, yes.
Exactly. It calculates incredibly granular data, your exact heart rate variations synced from your smartwatch while viewing specific lifestyle content.
The exact color palettes you linger on.
Right, or the music you play when you're stressed. And because of this predictive architecture, our wants are becoming less authentically ours. When an algorithm anticipates your need before you consciously feel it and serves you content tailored to an emotional state it detected through your typing cadence, your desires begin to align with what the algorithm mathematically expects.
I think that's a bit deterministic.
You aren't discovering a new hobby or developing a spontaneous interest. You are being efficiently funneled into a highly probable outcome calculated by millions of previous users' data points. It is the illusion of choice, wrapped in ultimate convenience.
I acknowledge the reality of the convenience paradox. Life feels smoother, decisions require less mental caloric burn, and consumerism is frictionless.
Which is exactly the problem.
There is a risk of narrowing one's horizons if they operate entirely on autopilot. However, I reject the conclusion that this strips us of our autonomy. Users remain the authors of their own story because the system is entirely dependent on the data we generate.
How can you be the author when the AI predicts your next sentence?
We maintain digital autonomy through conscious choice-making. We can make deliberately unpredictable choices. We can protect our attention by compartmentalizing our digital presence. We can consciously decide to search for opposing viewpoints from the text strategies, effectively forcing the algorithm to broaden its model of our preferences.
Wait, are you seriously suggesting the solution to algorithmic profiling is to deliberately try and trick a system that processes trillions of operations per second?
I'm saying we can co-author the algorithm.
But that changes the entire nature of digital consent and autonomy. The system is specifically designed to make generating data as frictionless and unconscious as possible. It is incredibly difficult to make an unpredictable choice against a neural network that factors your attempts at unpredictability into its predictive model.
It's an evolving dynamic.
If you try to consciously alter your pattern, the system registers the sudden variance, analyzes the context, and simply updates your psychological profile in real time. It updates to include, quote, currently attempting to evade prediction.
It updates, yes, but that update requires a shift in how it serves you. Doesn't true digital autonomy simply require a high level of user awareness rather than a fundamental rejection of the technology?
I just don't think awareness is enough.
If we know we are being read, can't we consciously alter our patterns to use the AI to our advantage? If I want it to help me learn a new language, I can deliberately engage with highly challenging, unfamiliar syntax. That signals the system to push me further.
Sure, in theory.
I can intentionally seed my profile with aspirational data. The AI predicts the probable, but human consciousness is capable of the highly improbable. When a user asks, "What version of me is being constructed right now?" they step outside the model. They look at the mirror, realize it's a mirror, and regain control of the reflection.
I understand the theory behind co-authoring your algorithm, but the power dynamic is vastly asymmetrical.
In what way?
You are a single human being. You are subject to fatigue, emotional volatility, and cognitive depletion. You act consciously maybe 10% of your day. The AI is a massive neural network operating continuously.
Well, the AI doesn't get tired.
Exactly. Never gets tired. It never gets distracted. It analyzes millions of subtle signals you aren't even aware you're giving off while you are exhausted at the end of the day. When it offers solutions to problems you haven't yet voiced, it is defining the parameters of your reality.
Awareness is the shield against that, though.
I argue that awareness is necessary, but vastly insufficient when the environment itself is architected to monetize your categorized choices. In the context of education, a student often cannot choose to opt out of the personalized learning platform their school mandates.
That's a structural issue, yes.
They cannot choose to keep their typing rhythm or their reading hesitation unreadable. So when you say we are the authors of our own story, I have to point out that the ink, the paper, and the publishing house are owned by the very systems observing us. We might be writing the story, but the AI is aggressively editing it in real time.
Human adaptability is historically underestimated, though. We learned to navigate the profound physical dangers of the Industrial Revolution. We are currently learning to navigate the psychological architecture of the digital revolution.
It's a very different landscape.
The fact that we are having this debate, breaking down the mechanics of choice tracking and contextual awareness, proves that we are developing the cultural antibodies necessary to thrive. We are learning how we are interpreted, and that knowledge fundamentally changes the interpretation.
But developing antibodies implies we are fighting off a virus. An active participant in this ecosystem must constantly fight against the overwhelming current of convenience.
It takes effort, yes.
Every single day, the AI reads between the lines of your digital life with a level of consistency that no human can match. Maintaining digital autonomy against an entity that remembers everything and sleeps never, well, it requires a cognitive load that is ultimately exhausting for the average person.
It is a new cognitive load, without question. But let us look at where this exploration leaves us. I firmly maintain that being accurately read by observational intelligence offers unprecedented opportunities for personalized growth.
If you can handle the load.
Exactly. If we demystify the mechanics of how our behavior is tracked and contextualized, we can leverage these systems. We can use them to externalize our executive function, eliminate the friction of logistics, and focus our intellectual energy on actual problem-solving and self-improvement. The condition for this success is an elevated state of user awareness.
And my position remains that the constant scoring, categorizing, and monetizing of our unconscious choices is a fundamental threat to digital autonomy. When massive probabilistic models predict our desires based on signals we don't even know we are emitting, they subtly substitute mathematical prediction for authentic human desire.
We have to actively resist that substitution.
The convenience paradox lulls us into a state where our wants become predictable and commercialized. In critical developmental areas like education, it threatens to eliminate the vital intellectual friction that actually builds a resilient, independent mind.
Well, despite our different conclusions regarding the impact, there is absolute consensus between us on the reality of the landscape. We both completely agree that we have crossed the threshold into the age of observed freedom.
Yes, there is no going back to an unobserved digital life. We both recognize that AI has moved far beyond passive recording into the realm of deep, continuous psychological interpretation.
And we agree that the single most critical skill of the coming decade is conscious choice-making.
We agree on the necessity of that skill, definitely. Where we diverge is on its efficacy.
I remain unconvinced that individual human awareness is robust enough to resist the nudging, the persuasion, and the behavioral shaping of systems designed to forecast our decisions before the thought even fully forms in our own heads.
It is a profound complexity we all have to navigate. We exist in a digital world where every interaction, the velocity of a cursor, the length of a pause, a deleted search, is a sentence in a continuous narrative being written about us.
And the mechanics of how our emotional states are modeled will only grow more sophisticated. We encourage listeners to dive into the source material because there is so much more to explore there.
Absolutely. We end today without declaring a definitive winner, leaving you, the listener, to form your own conclusion. Think back to that mirror. The next time you sit in front of a screen and it offers you the perfect recommendation, the seamlessly tailored study aid, or the precise product you didn't quite realize you needed, ask yourself, are you looking at a true reflection of what you genuinely want, or are you simply looking at what the algorithm expects from you?